Testing. 1, 2, 3. Test, test. Hey, YouTube. I hope everybody's doing well on this 2 days after July 4th, Saturday. Those of us in the United States are pretty much on vacation. Hey, Laura, thank you for the sound check. How's Laura doing? I know the rest of the world doesn't celebrate July 4th like we do here in the United States, but this is our basically our main holiday until we start getting into the end of the year. I don't know, for the U.S., I guess Halloween's the next big one coming up, so that's into winter, so this is kind of the mid-summerish. It's been an interesting year in weather here in the United States. It's been really extra rainy. I've not really been following the rest of the planet, but here in the United States it's been really rainy, more wet than normal, or in parts of the United States. I saw Fairbanks, Alaska had a high of 90 yesterday. It's their warmest on record day ever. And it's earthquake season in California again. I hope everybody in California is all right. They seem to feel like they're going to get more, that these are precursors to a larger shock coming. They think they'll have at least one more 7.0. So it's been an interesting weather, climate, tectonic year for the United States. It's been, I'm not sure exactly how it's been for the rest of the world. I think they're having super heat waves in a lot of places again, and they're probably too wet or too dry in some places. Climate is always local. Weather is always local, and climate is larger areas, and when climate starts changing, it affects our fish in a lot of ways in the wild, where the fish live in the wild, what kind of water levels they've got, what kind of temperatures they're dealing with. It's if you stop and think about it, it's really easy to connect everything that goes on in the outside world, in nature, to our fish, because it affects them in one way or the other. They have some kind of response to when the weather changes, to when the climate changes, and suddenly they're having drier and drier seasons, or literally their habitat dries up. And any luck, Justin? And so we perceive things in nature, but we don't often connect those things to the way our fish live. And by the same token, inside of our fish rooms, or inside of our houses where our fish tanks are, it's pretty much the same thing. If you have an air conditioner break or something along those lines, if your heat goes out in the wintertime. All of those things affect the way your fish live. Now, if you've got heaters in every individual tank, then it's probably not going to affect them immediately. But the stress of no longer having the room temperature at a certain temperature will cause those heaters to work harder, and and those things can end up affecting how your fish are thriving or not thriving in your house. And when weather fronts come in, in the wild, when a weather front comes in, your wild fish are thinking about, they feel that barometric change. They know there's a potential for a big rainstorm coming. And at certain times of the year, like in the dry season, the first big barometric change that comes down the pike, they're looking for new water, and they're looking for insects washed into the water, and they're looking for plant material to get knocked out of trees and washed off of banks and be in the water. They're looking for a heavy water flow, which may or may not give them better water parameters, because it might be a bunch of mud and silt runoff that gets run off the first big heavy set of rains in the year, and the water may suddenly become not so clear and turbid and a lot more active. So those fish recognize changes that are coming. Hey, valley fish in the wild, they understand what may happen. And by the same token, when they're in our tanks and our houses, they still feel those barometric weather changes coming. They still think that it may rain, and suddenly there may be more water around them, and there may be live food in the water, on the surface of the water and down in the water, because insects and eggs and larvae will get washed into the water, and they will feast on that. And that's when they will start their breeding season, because suddenly there's a lot more water, they can get to a lot more areas, and there is a big influx of food. Hey, valley fish, welcome to the stream. There's a big influx of food, live and dead insects, and other things that get washed off of the banks into the water when the rain's really heavy. So they recognize that there's a bunch of live food coming when there's a big rainstorm early in the season, when it's the end of the dry season and the wet season's coming. So we need to, as fish keepers, recognize what's going on in our house and what's going on in nature. That, hey Haley, welcome to the stream. I've watched part of your live stream this morning. I didn't get through all of it, but I'm about ready to break into whistling Andy Griffith for you. Anyway, I'm just trying. I'm just trying to get people to think outside the box about what their fish in the wild experience and what their fish in their tanks experience. And let's be honest, some of these fish that we have in our tanks have never known what goes on in the wild. So some of them are only used to what goes on in a tank or a holding tank or something like that. and it's a whole different cycle of feeding, but they still experience that barometric pressure change. Yeah, lots of Jaden in that stream. I'm proud that you managed to make your own coffee, Haley. That'll stead you well going to Africa when you end up having to get up in the middle of the night and make your own coffee. um, our fish, even though they are generations removed from the wild, it's I think it's impossible to get the wild completely out of your fish. I think that if we took 1,000 tank raised cichlids that have not seen the wild in generations and generations and took them back to where they come from and dumped them in the water, that most of them would survive just as well in that environment as they survive in tanks. They might be hovering around the surface looking for people to feed them for a while, but they're going to get the idea pretty soon that they got to find their own food, and they'll go right back to it again. I don't think that we worry about fish breeding, getting genetics, Yeah, I agree, Haley. Instinct doesn't train out, and that's basically what I'm trying to say about our tank raised for generation fish. They don't lose their wild instincts that tell them that a huge barometric change is going to produce rain potentially. And so it behooves us to recognize those things and do a heavy cold water change as a large barometric change is moving in. When you see a large weather front moving in towards your area, your fish are feeling it days before you do. So about the time it gets to you, do a large heavy water change, and do it with colder water than you normally use, and you will be in effect reenacting the wild for them. And after you do the water change, throw some loose plants in on top of the water, and give them some set a banana out and let fruit flies collect on it. Set a banana out in a Tupperware tub and let fruit flies collect in it, and sneak in there and slip the lid on and stick it in the freezer so that they all freeze. And then after you do that slightly colder water change, throw those fruit flies back in. Hey, Kaler's Aquatics, welcome to the stream. And hey, Tom Patterson, welcome to the stream. I guess what I'm trying to do is to get people to recognize how we can take advantage of what the fish are faced with in the wild. So you think, Haley, you think your roe fish are eating the isopods? I'm sure they'll love those. Haley, I've been thinking off and on about your situation, and I really feel like for you to get where you really want to be, you need to basically wall off half of your basement and run rubber lining, get rubber lining that will go up, the length of the room and and build one side and attach it, and then run the liner from wall to wall, maybe 18, 20 inches deep, and build one wall for the outside wall. And then you're going to need to figure out some way to heat it. You might put a pond spray, the thing that sticks up out of the pond and sprays water. You might put one of those in and stick a heater near it, so that, yeah, you're going to have to come up with some kind of water flow that doesn't cause issues with the fish liking the water to be fairly stagnant. Your walls in your basement are probably going to be about 60, 65, maybe 60, maybe 70 year round, because they're underground, and so the ground is insulating them. But it's going to get colder in the winter, and you're going to need to come up with some kind of water flow. I mean, you could do like Lucas and put 6 400-watt heaters in there and just let them heat. But without some kind of water flow, a slight sluggish current moving the water around, it's just going to all evaporate into the air. It'll heat that 40-inch circle around that heater, but it won't move water very much. I mean, there is a certain amount of water that will move from hot to cold, so you'll get some exchange that way, but it won't be as much as if you've got a slow amount of water flow. And those pond sprinkler things, they basically just pull water in and spray it a little bit around. They don't really create a lot of current. And I'm not sure that anything like that would be in the wild, but it will give some aeration. And as far as the landlocked part of the pond, that you want for, I'm not sure exactly what you could do that would, you could build like a shelf around the edges. Yeah, I can see that the racks are more important right now. I'm just talking about ideas to kick around in your head. I've thought about your situation with those rope fish and what you're trying to do. And my experience is, until you get to a grander scale, you're going to keep tripping over the issues of smaller environments. Hey Bob, welcome to the stream. And Bob asked, wonder if the fish man who does all sorts of inventions and custom creations could do something. Yeah, I just think that Haley, when she goes to Africa, she's going to find out that there's very little water flow in that, generally over a large area there's going to be some water exchange. Because of the electronics. Well, it might be, but I kind of doubt it. What you're going to have trouble with in the basement is lighting. Getting enough light on them for the plants to grow without practice building a Faraday cage. Well, you can give it a shot if you think that's thinking outside the box. But I'm not sure that, if you're really concerned about that, then I would figure out some way to measure that sort of thing in Africa when you're on the ground with the rope fish. I'm not sure how you would even begin to measure that unless you brought some kind of sensitive with you. who could tell you what's going on. Maybe you can find one there. I, I just I just think that with a giant swamp in it, yeah. Well, that would probably work. That would probably, except the wintertime, it's going to be nightmarish outside. At least in the basement, you've got the opportunity to have. Yeah, I'm not sure electronics. You're going to find any electronics out there, but that doesn't mean that there isn't certain amounts of oh, how would I say this? Um, Electronic discharges in nature. You know, if it lightnings every day, yeah, there's zero electronics, but that doesn't mean there's zero electrical activity going on. If it's lightning there all day long, you know, every day for a certain period of time, there's going to be some kind of uh, ozone created by that. There's going to be some kind of electronical charge created by that. That much lightning is going to have an effect of some sort. Now, how you would go about measuring that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you would do that. You'd almost have to have a portable galvanic response kind of setup that would let you test the electronic resistance of plant material around and in the pond at one time of the day when the furthest away from all the lightning, and at one time of day right after the lightning, so that you could record the differences between plant material resistance, the resistance in plant. Yeah, well, all of our fish have a lateral line of some sort. In some of the older fish, it's broken up more, or it's other organisms. Bob offers Ampullary of Lorenzini. And Bob, you've got me on that one. An EMF detector, yeah, that might work, but I'm not sure she's going to be able to get a full EMF detector in her. I've never seen an EMF detector that was small and portable, and she's not going to be able to haul a large electronic array into Africa and tote it around, probably. But I'm just going off of her talking about the Faraday cage. Oh, I missed it. Yeah, they use it for hunting. Ah, okay, so this is something that sharks have on them. Ah, yeah, well, there's as much as we know about our fish, as much as scientists know about our fish, there's still an awful lot that we don't know at all. There's still an immense amount of research that needs to be done about how fish make use of all their organs, about how they have evolved their organs. We basically come from the same stock, and we don't have tails. We don't have lateral lines that I'm aware of. although that doesn't mean that our evolution hasn't used the lateral line in some other sense, incorporated it into our brain, third eye. I'm not sure exactly how as organisms, human beings have evolved the hey Dan Slee, welcome to the stream. Right, right, Haley. I think all of that kind of stuff, while some people might think it's kind of woo-woo, I would encourage further pursuit of those kinds of ideas, and not because you may suddenly produce scientific relevant information about some lightning sensing organ that roefish have that no other fish have, because in that search you may, when you start ticking all the boxes in that search, you may notice something else. You may notice by focusing your attention in that area, you may shed light on something that no one else has thought about really, or that no one else has pursued really. And that's what thinking outside the box allows. As much as our science has progressed, and it's stunning how much it's progressed, there is 10 times that much more out there that we don't have a clue about, that we still view as magic, or view as indescribable, or we view as not visible, that we can't even tell that it's there. So there is vast amounts of potential in those kinds of areas, and in your case with specific fish, reed fish, ropefish, that if you are pursuing something oddball like that, then you may uncover something else in that pursuit that will be, groundbreaking. And how you go about that, thinking about how you go about that, that's invention. That's how invention happens, because some manufacturer needs a chemical to do a certain thing that there is no chemical that does, and 10 different chemical makers start coming up with potential things that might work, and boom, you have silicon rubber all of a sudden. The way things happen is not directly in science most of the time. Sometimes it is. But the way things happen is they're trying to do something else, or they're trying to do something else. Creator of the home aquaria Faraday cage. Hey Pam, welcome to the stream. How's Pam doing today? We as hobbyists are not scientists usually. Sometimes I feel like when we are advanced enough as hobbyists, we get to the point where we have so much knowledge in so many different fields that we border on being scientific. There are points of time when we border in the area of science because we've learned so much. But science is the art of recreating an experiment to get a result, and then being able to recreate that same experiment elsewhere by someone else and getting the same result, to the point that a theorem, an idea that scientists have developed, can be proven out as much as possible and become generally recognized as a fact. And it's that process that differentiates the hobbyist from the scientist. So when you start trying to do something, a lot more hands-on experiments. Yep, more fun, way more fun. When the hobbyists have reached a point where they begin to develop theorems, theory about the fact that ropefish have sensory organs that are highly attuned to lightning, and that lightning is used by them to circumnavigate their environment, or is used as echolocation for their mates or their progeny. All these things can be developed as theories. They have to be proven by scientific experiment to become facts. And the scientists are a lot better at that than the hobbyists are. But the hobbyists can produce theorems of their own. They can, through observation, really deep observation, begin to develop their own theories about what they're experiencing in their deep observation of their fish. It's like me saying that I think that fish from different areas of the world all put together in a tank creates a problem of communication for fish, because the fish from their area, whichever one species you would pick that's in a community tank, the fish from their area understand what they're saying, but the fish from the other areas don't really grok what they're saying. And when I say they're saying, I'm talking about the motions their body makes. I'm talking about their coloration, the variation of their coloration. I'm talking about their threat to do violence. I'm talking about them doing violence. Maybe ropefish use those organs to sense bugs up on the land. Here's a roly-poly up on the land, and I'm going to get up there and get it. And it's because of all the lightning in the area has created some kind of charge, some kind of field, then maybe they can use that field and their highly adapted organs to recognize insects on the land portion, which is not something that most fish would be doing, because most fish just use their vision to see bugs that they could shoot off of a leaf with a water jet, or that they might leap up and catch off of a leaf. Whereas maybe these ropefish have developed a sense of the land based on electrical charges created by, and I'm just conjecturing here, but those are the kinds of ways that you would that you would go about developing a theory about what you've observed and then find some way to prove it, you know. And that's the next phase. And most of us as hobbyists don't get to that next phase, but some do. Some get together with ichthyologists. Some get together with marine biologists and freshwater biologists and discuss these theories and discuss how they could go about proving these theories. So it's a, you know, Peb's theory is that coffee keeps her alive. I know I've said this many times before, but the old joke about the kids in the old country school, one room schoolhouse, and the teacher stands up and gets into the science and says, "Okay, students, what holds you on Earth?" And one boy jumps up and says, "Teacher, it's gravity that holds me on Earth." And the teacher says, "That's right." And another kid jumps up and waves his arm, and the teacher says, "Yes." And he says, "It may be gravity that holds him on Earth, but it's gravy that holds me on Earth." Sometimes it depends on how you look at things when you arrive at the facts. So it's I'm just trying to stretch your head, Haley, so that you will begin to think of things on a bigger picture level. Not that you need to go all bigger picture. You need to go very much small picture as well. But once you've gathered all the small picture, sometimes it doesn't hurt to have a big picture theory that you might be able to plug that into, you know. And there are ways to detect energy fields. There are ways to create energy fields. You know, you could get a Jacob's ladder and set it up on one end of your pond with ground area. Say you made your pond, your swamp. Say you made your swamp 10 foot wide. I'm not sure how wide your basement is, but say you made your swamp 10 foot wide and 2 foot, or 2 foot wide on one side and 1 foot wide on the other side are ground, you know, like your dirt shelf, and that would give you 7 foot by whatever the length of your basement is of swamp to work with, and set up a heavy light system on one end, get you a couple of hanging halides, and set it up on one end, and grow reeds and give them an actual reed, you know, give them 6 inches of soil on the bottom and give them actual reeds growing out of the water. And then you've recreated, once you go to Africa and actually see what's on the ground and walk around them in the mud, how do you manage the humidity? Well, you have a really good example in front of you. You go to work every day in a highly humid situation with all those tanks at Lucas's house, and you listen every day to all those humidifiers running. But say you come up with some kind of lid, you know, to break down the evaporation, and you're going to have to think outside the box on this. There is a guy that I met at OCA, 3 years ago now, Ohio Cichlid Extravaganza. Um, right. So you've got good experience for how to deal with humidity, dehumidifiers for days. But you can ameliorate that by lids on the tanks. So say you have, um, go buy 10-foot um, panels of the plexiglass, or not plexiglass, what do they call it? The roofing, the clear roofing, or the like Joey uses to cover his pond. You could get that stuff. Well, not really. Like I was telling you, I met a guy at OCA that at 2 o'clock in the morning I couldn't sleep, and I got up and I went outside to smoke a cigarette, polycarbonate. There you go. My mind's going on me, Haley. I can't remember my words anymore. I went out to sit down and smoke and thought I'd be out there all by myself out front. And 3 or 4 people came out and started smoking and talking. They'd been obviously somewhere doing something. And we started talking. One guy sat down on the bench with me, and we started talking about fish, of course. And he pops his phone out and pops a picture up and shows it to me. And I say, Cerebrum ictus planiceps. And he looks at me. He looks at me like there's not 100 people in this country that could name that fish immediately upon seeing a picture of it. I said, it's one of my favorite fish, the firewood cat. And I have kept several of them, but was never able to keep them well enough and large enough to really let them grow out. And when they got too big, or one of them died on me, I don't remember what the cause was now, but one of them got too big for my 150, and I had to take it back in and turn it into a fish place that had a really large tank. They had like a 300-gallon, and I took it and gave it to them. I said, where do you keep it at? He said, my whole basement is a pond. I've literally got from doorway to all walls a pond. He said it's 4 foot deep, and it goes from corner to corner, wall to wall. And the only place where it's any different is right at the door. And he had 6 or 7 really huge catfish in there. None of them is big. Oh yeah, he said he had it on auto. He's a really big guy in the Ohio Cichlid Association. If you he's got stuff online, and so you can look him up. And his name slips my mind now. It's been 3 years since I talked to him. But I got to telling him about what I knew about them and what, how that worked for me, what worked for me and what didn't work. And he said that it's a female that he's got, and that she is a holy biatch, and that she has eaten almost every large cichlid that he has put in the tank with her, and the only thing she allows is the large, he had the red-tailed catfish. If you go back to my OCA videos, He has the red-tailed catfish that was at the show in a giant tank saying, "Do not buy these because they get like this." And what was his catfish's name? Coffee or something. Something silly. His kid's name, but I can't remember all of it now. But you will see that fish, and his name may be somewhere near that too. I'm not sure. But I did. Hey, Corona Ken, welcome to the stream. Basically, I've been bending Haley's ear about ideas about her rope fish obsession. Anyway, he said that fish, that it knew when he was coming to feed it, that it heard him coming down the basement, and that it would get about 6 foot away from the doorway, or 5 foot away from the doorway, about the normal length that he threw the food that he was feeding them into the tank, and sit with its feelers up out of the water in a straight line at that doorway. And I think he said she was like almost 3 foot then. And they're not very big around. That's why they're called firewood catfish. The natives don't want to catch them because they're useless as food. They basically throw them to one side, let them dry out, and use them as firewood. And that's why they call them firewood catfish, because there's not enough meat on them to literally eat. So a 3 foot long firewood catfish is not that heavy of a fish, but they are powerful. What little bit of meat's on them is all muscle. So, and he said that all the other shovel nose and pie mold catfish that he had in that tank, and he had several, because they were basically the only ones that could survive, and the red tail, they would all line up behind her because they knew if they got in front of her, she'd try to eat them when the food hit the water. So he would throw the food in and she would get first shot at it, and then everybody else would get in. I'm not sure that he is in any of the videos, but there are some videos, I think, of that red-tailed catfish, or there are pictures of that red-tailed catfish, and I apologize. I apologize on those pictures. I did a terrible job of taking pictures, and there were so many of them I didn't want to mess with the string, so I just put them all up there. So you're just looking at whatever happened to come out of the camera at the time. But yeah, I think a basement pond is your best shot at doing what you want to do. You can look at Dustin's videos in his greenhouse for how he's set up the pond liners that he's using to grow plants in. You know, pond liner is going to be the easiest way to go. And if you use the 3 existing walls that are already in your basement, and maybe tack some wood up on each of them, and then attach your ground, however you're going to do the ground. Tom's offering you a different cover idea. Yeah, you could use a fabric cover, pool covers. They make all kinds of things out there. You're just going to have to think outside the box, Haley, to get what you need. And I would highly recommend that you go to Africa first, or spend a lot of time studying. Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about. But of course, those are not going to be clear. You're going you're going to need to come up with some way to, it may just be easier just to leave it open and run 2 or 3 humidifiers in there. But you want it humid enough for their liking. You don't want it so dry that it's not. Oh, Blair's Biotypes? I'm gonna play dirty here. This book, you're more than welcome to read mine, Haley. What do you want? What do you want? You want a chapter on Africa? Okay, Lower Niger, Nigeria, page 20. Geez, with frozen shoulder, it's really hard to. Okay, Haley, you're going to have to. The video's not functioning well enough, but you might be able to blow it up and read it yourself. I think I read to you before. You can always come back and just stop the video. Stop the video and blow it up. Because there's no way I can read all this to you. For one, it would be copyrighted. And I'm going to stop there. You are more than welcome when you come to sit down and read this book, Will Haley. So, I'll just give you another reason to want to come. I gave you several pages there, but mostly I remember reading it, and mostly it's about, Heiko has to spend time talking about all the journeys that he has taken to certain areas, so, and the people that he's run across and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's a great book. It doesn't cover ropefish, though. I've looked already for you. So you can go back and stop that and get the first 3 or first 6 pages about the lower Niger Delta. But if I go much further than that, I'm going to get a notice from Heiko Blair's lawyer to cease and desist, and I don't want to go there. I like Heiko Blair. I want to promote his writing. I want to promote his work. I've met the man. I'm yet to shake his hand and introduce myself to him, but I have followed him and studied his work. I would highly recommend his channel. He has a channel. It's very rarely updated, but what is there is remarkable, and I would highly recommend that you go check out Heiko Blair's FishTube channel and recognize that the books that he has written are just chock full of knowledge. They're expensive. My wife saw this book on Lucas's live stream, and when he was talking to Heiko Blair, I'm so jealous Lucas got to talk to him. I could have if I'd have forced my way, but I was reticent with Heiko Blair to force my way. I respect him so much that I didn't see the opportunity to do that. And he came and hunted Lucas up, so I'm super jelly of Lucas. But she made me buy it for her. My wife did. All the copies that were there were gone, and what little bit of cash I had with me went to buy fish from Lucas, because it was like, okay, Lucas, I got the Aru2s that he had at the show, basically, is what it was, because I know how hard it is to get him to part with those, so. And my wife desperately wanted them, so I bought the book from Heiko Blair's company, and I would highly recommend that you search that out and study the things that he has for sale. It's hard to get him to part with any fish. Yes, it is. Because Lucas is not a salesman. He is a collector. And every fish and shrimp that you want to take from him is part of his collection. Oh, you think Lucas will let you kidnap it? Well, all right. If not, you're more than welcome to come down here and read it. My phone situation is still goofed up. You might get through to me and you might not. My phone was so goofy that I could not record your number when you called. So at some point, you need to call me back again when I have a phone functioning that I can transfer your number to. Monster Fish Bash. When and where is Monster Fish Bash? Well, we can. Florida, July 21st. Yeah, you'll be passing right by here, Boca Raton. Well, maybe you can stick me in the trunk and take me with you to Monster Fish Bash. Except I probably won't do well traveling that far in the trunk. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. We're at the hour mark, and Justin is here working on my quote new phone. Big Rich is going. Man, that sounds like a party. I'd love to get in on that, but we'll just have to see for me. But you know you're welcome. Just be aware that it may be a trash pile you're walking into. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Good luck with your fish. I can't go. Why can't I go, Pam? Why can't I go? Yeah, I hope I can go too. I'm not holding my breath. July 21st is not that far away, and because I'm listening and lurking, but Pam, it's 59 minutes on the elapsed time. I spoil after an hour online. My ranting and raving goes stale really fast, and so I have to keep cutting it off to leave you wanting more, so that you will tune in same time next week, same bat channel, same bat station. Pam, I don't know how you do it. You're old. I'm old too. I know how you do it. You smoke while you're on the air. You just turn the camera away. That's how you do it. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'm sorry, Pam. Just leave it on and pretend like I'm still talking to you. You can let it end and then restart it again. All right, guys. Good luck with your fish. Good luck with the rest of your holiday if you're here in the States, and if you're not here in the States, pray for us. Pray that our way of life survives. More than happy to do it, Haley. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Good luck with your fish. As Eric Bodrock states so magnificently, be the fish. Be the fish.